So the Shakti accumulation is like that kind of sense of like enough. It is oftentimes a no. Sometimes it is a yes, right? So when I get those 80 rejections and I'm preparing my application the third year around, it's recognizing I have thoughts and feelings within me that are kind of like, oh, like what if this happens and what if this happens and what if this happens? And I turn to my mind and I say, enough. We're going to do this. That's it. And it's not we're going to half-ass it. So bullying your mind or convincing yourself means that the mind will rebel in subtle ways. And I know that y'all probably understand this too, where when you force yourself into something, your mind half-asses it. You sabotage it. You're like, I'm afraid that I'm going to fail again, so I'm not going to study as hard. You just can't get your mind to focus. You say, enough. We're going to give it our all. In that third time, I still improved my application, right? I did the best that I could. I changed it quite a bit. It's giving it your all with no expectations in return. So this is kind of these are the qualities of it, right? So it's giving it your all with expecting nothing in return. That's a really important part of Shakti accumulation. So that I think it's time to get up. Very good. That's it. Right? So people can call it discipline, but then there are a lot of people who are living disciplined lives who are actually living in a habit, living on autopilot, addicted to self-improvement, orthorexia, bodybuilders. Oh my God, look at that person who's so disciplined. Anorexia, so disciplined. Most disciplined people I've ever met on the planet are people who are anorexic and orthorexic. Their discipline is insane. Insane. Insane level of willpower. And also, they're victims to themselves. Does that make sense? Is this related to Vairagya? Sure. Right? So now everyone's tossing out concepts, and this is the point of the Weird Stuff lecture. I don't know if this makes sense. This is not about... Okay, so we had that... This is why we're doing this. Right? Because you guys don't... And it's impossible to know how to ask for this. So this is where we have Shakti. And then people are saying, is it discipline? Is it nofap? Is it karma? Is it meditation? Is it the soul? Is it inner voice? That's my point, right? So you guys can ask, Dr. K, can you do a lecture about this? 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 But if you understand this thing, this will give you an insight into all of these other things. Now you understand really what the point of meditation is. You understand how discipline leads to good things. Right? So if I take someone who's anorexic, they are disciplined, but they are not accumulating Shakti. If I take someone who's orthorexic, they are disciplined, but they are not accumulating Shakti. And then if I take someone who is obese and starts to lose weight, moves towards a healthy weight, they are accumulating Shakti. Because of what are they giving into? And what are they resisting within themselves? We also understand other things. Celibacy is a very powerful source of Shakti. Incredibly powerful. What we call brahmacharya. But let me ask you guys something. So let's say we have someone like the Dalai Lama, who arguably has a fair chunk of Shakti there. And we have someone who's an incel. Neither of them have sex. Is there a Shakti difference? What's the difference between brahmacharya and being an incel? Y'all tell me. Very good. One is a choice. That's where Shakti lies. Now y'all understand. Shakti is about the choices you make, not your circumstances, not the outcomes. It is about the internal choice. Hey, Dr. K, you started a Healthy Gamer. How about I give you $1 million? We can do it however you want. We can call it an investment for like 0.1% of the company, or I can make it a donation. Whichever way you want it. Whatever is convenient. It is an internal choice. That is Shakti. That's actually the best definition of it, I think. Right? So then you have to be careful, because if you say, I'm so reluctant to accepting gifts, why? Right? So part of that is also, part of Shakti accumulation can be accepting gifts. I don't feel right accepting gifts. This person is giving me this gift. They're giving it to me out of joy and love. They're giving it to me to demonstrate value. Who am I to reject this overture? So become a Chad for the sake of becoming a Chad is also Shakti. Right? That's the essence of it. Okay? Okay, good. So, fantastic. So Randy H said, the choice and not now click for me. The gift doesn't. It feels karmic. Yes, the gift is karmic. Right? So that's what's so weird about this stuff is like, I can't explain it in a way that makes sense. It's impossible for me to explain in a way that it will make sense to you. The only thing that it can do is trigger your own experiential memories. And if it triggers your own experiential memories, and if y'all want to understand, you have to think about your own life. Pay attention. This is the thing, right? So if you look at psychology of motivation, I've never seen a paper that talks about any of this stuff. Is it a choice? Not now. Enough is enough. It's okay to do it sometimes, and it's not okay to do it other times. These are dimensions that are even beyond mind, because in order for it to be logical, mind operates on the level of logic. It tries to force our experiences into something that it can understand, but the mind has limited capability of understanding. Okay? But I think y'all get it. So, give me a second. Okay. So, okay. So I'm going to talk about one or two nuances, and then we're going to get to practice. Okay. So this is where things get confusing, because if you I think you can have the benefit of good karma. So just because things are advantageous in your life doesn't mean you should reject them all. Right. So I get good karmas all the time, and I accept those good karmas. And then there are moments where it feels like there's a big Shakti gain and it's giving something up. And that's all internal. Right? So when I get a good karma and I'm not giving in to an internal desire, then it's fine. So we're not saying don't, forsake all your material desires and ignore all your good karmas. If you get a winning lottery ticket, by all means, enjoy. But then there are a couple of other interesting things that happen. Right? So now we're going to pay attention to the internal. When I get lucky for the first time, it's luck. When I get lucky for the second time, it's luck. When I get lucky for the third time, it's luck. When I get lucky for the fourth time, it's luck. What happens if I get a positive karma from the world, a positive karma from the world, a positive karma from the world over and over and over again, what will happen to me? What do y'all think? Ah, very good. Right? So, you're going to expect it. I deserve it. Expectance, accustomed. And this is weakening your Shakti. Right? Because what is happening internally in that person? They're saying, I deserve this. This is the gratification of my greatness. This is what I deserve. They are not saying enough. They're not saying enough is enough. No means no. They're not saying, let me do something better for the world. They're not saying, I'm grateful. They're not saying those things. Shakti dies with ego. Very good. Shakti absolutely dies with ego. And now, hopefully, y'all understand all of these concepts that we talk about. Discipline, nofap, ego, meditation, even the fundamentals of ego. Complacency. All of it relates to Shakti. This is the central piece of the puzzle that is missing in most people's lives. And when people understand this and I work with them, like, it's transformative. Now, there's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of which is which. Like, is this karma? Do I take advantage? Do I not take advantage? I'm not saying give up all your good karma, which I think it's important to mention. Right? But it's all about the internal. So when something good happens to you, when you have a good karmic receipt, what do you do with it? Right? So, like, yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. We'll get to questions in a second. I see there are some good ones. But we have a couple of things. So now we're going to talk about meditative practice. Okay. So meditative practice is the most direct form of the accumulation of Shakti. Because it is action taken without an expectation. And it is oftentimes immense action taken without an expectation. Now, you can even like sit down to meditate with an expectation, but the whole point of the practice is that through the practice, that thought will leave your mind. So you can meditate for a benefit, and in order, if you truly meditate, you won't even want that benefit when you're meditating. Does that make sense? Once you enter the no-mind state, then you can't want anything. Okay? So meditation, I think, is the most direct form. The other thing is that now things get weird. So the really tricky thing is that as we meditate, so the less desire we have when we meditate, the more intensity we meditate with, the greater our accumulation of Shakti, and the more manifest things will become around us. Okay? So when we meditate, this is what I want y'all to do. So it's not like we'll get to particular meditations in a second. But when you meditate, I don't know how to say this, sit down to meditate with this in your mind and then let it go. So what I want your meditation practice to be is the most intense action you can put forth without any kind of goal. Right? So now we really understand meditation. So when I sit down and observe my breath, it's that I want to observe my breath 100%, not 99%, not 98%. Give your all to it, like 100%. Meditation should be exhausting, but it's not. All of the things that normally exhaust you, if you meditate using that effort, it will not be exhausting. But in anything else in life, it will be exhausting. And what's the difference? How can you do something that will be exhausting in every element of your life, to work really, really hard and expect nothing in return? How can it not be exhausting? Because you are tapping into Shakti. Because you are tapping into the very source of energy. And when you tap into it, you have such a vast source of energy that you can do it for a long time. Right? So this is good. You guys are guessing. It's fine. That's the whole point, right? So when you do it with that degree of vigor, you tap into Shakti and it's not tiring. And you enter no mind, and all that stuff is correct too. Right? So that's the purpose of no mind. No mind links us to the divine, whatever that is. Okay? So this is the way that we want to meditate, with 100% effort and expecting nothing in return. I'm going to just do this practice here and now with the maximum intensity that I can put forth. Now, we've talked about things like discipline and all this kind of stuff. So there are added bonuses. So remember, we're talking about the Shakti level, but there's the karmic level too. So when I meditate every day with full intensity for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that will have a karmic impact. That will change my frontal lobes. My frontal lobes will strengthen. My emotions will calm down. The ability for my frontal lobes to regulate my amygdala will improve. My concentration and my focus will improve. My cortisol levels will go down. My IL-6, IL-1, and IL-10 levels will become more balanced. TNF-alpha will go up or down depending on what we need it to do. My autoimmune conditions will get better. My vaccine response rates will also improve. The immune system will calm down if it's attacking our body, and it'll ramp up if it's fighting something else, like it's OP. We know that meditation is OP. That's all at the karmic level. Will you be able to resist? Will you be able to know fat better if you meditate? Sure. Will you be able to regulate your emotions? Sure. Will you be able to concentrate and focus? Sure. But that's all at the karmic level. It's the biological level, the neuroscientific level. This is at the Shakti level. It's a different level. Deeper. Now, the last thing that we're going to do, so we've talked some about Tantra. And now y'all are asking all of this, okay, but how do I accumulate Shakti? So Tantra is the path of meditation, you could loosely say, that most tightly correlates with the accumulation of Shakti. So this goes sort of beyond my understanding, but there were people who really understood this Shakti stuff very, very, very well. And those people are tantrics. So they're the experts in Shakti accumulation. And what they discovered was that there are certain practices that will accumulate Shakti more robustly than other practices. And that gets very confusing because they oftentimes will accumulate Shakti for a material gain, and that's okay for them. That's hard to get into. But I want to show you all something. I don't know how pseudoscience this is, but this is wild. Okay, give me a second. I don't know if y'all have ever seen cymatics. So I don't know if y'all remember what a yantra looks like. Oh boy, there's no, hold on a second. Let's see if this one, yeah, okay, this one has desktop speakers, so hold on. So we're going to just watch this real quick. So I don't know if this is like pseudoscience or what, but we're going to do... Oh. So if we look at this, and then look at this. So what are y'all noticing, right? So like this is weird because we have these yantras that are these like weird symbols that have different, and this is looking more and more like this. This is wild. This is looking like a yantra. So I don't know what to make of this, to be honest. But we know that yantra and mantra are the two things. So like literally there is a vibratory frequency that accompanies a particular weird pattern. And I don't know if yogis, like I have no idea how the tantrics discovered these yantras or the mantras. So this is the first time that I've seen kind of a scientific representation that just like, okay, there's a certain like vibrational frequency that correlates or creates a certain physical pattern. So there's some connection on a fundamental level. Now, it's very possible that tantrics, like, you know, were just oscillating sand on a vibratory plate. Like maybe they did that. But I think this is where things get weird, but there's some weird, like when we get to the level of Shakti, there's some weird, like fundamental stuff going on, like in the bottom of existence. I don't know how else to describe it. And you can kind of tap into that. And whatever this weird connection is, there are like some, you know, there's a vibratory hertz and a certain pattern that gets formed. That's just some manifestation of it. Right? So I don't know. I mean, maybe they use naturally occurring ferrofluids. Like that could be it. I don't know. So some people will look at this and say, here is proof that the tantrics were correct. I don't think that that's true. I think this is just a really interesting data point that maybe the part of my brain that looks at clouds and sees pigs, maybe the same part of my brain that generates meaning out of randomness is looking at this and looking at the tantra stuff and being like, okay, this is a thing. Could be wrong. Okay? But I don't think that's the case. I think that when you get into deeper states of meditation, you start to see things. You start to see patterns. You start to hear sounds. And then these things are connected. And then what the tantrics basically figured out is they figured out the formula of Shakti accumulation. That if you want to accumulate a particular kind of Shakti, do this mantra and use this yantra. Because somehow deeper in the levels of the universe, and there's no science to this, by the way, right? This is like spiritual stuff. They sort of realize that a particular hertz has a particular yantra manifestation and a particular manifestation at the more distal ends of the universe. Distal ends of the universe meaning like manifestation in your life. And they literally figured out, okay, what are the building blocks of finding love in this world? How can we access a particular kind of energy that manifests love? And if you put in that energy, if you put in that karma, if you invest in it in the same way that you can build a palace with bricks, or you can build a shack with wood, you can invest this energy at that deeper transcendental level, and it will reverberate out and create manifestation in the world. They figured out how to edit the source code. And when they edit the source code, and it takes a lot of effort, it can manifest over here. So I think it's important to have a healthy dose of skepticism when approaching this stuff. I've met tantrics who can claim that they can cure any disease. I used to not believe them. Now, I'm not sure. I still, generally speaking, I would never recommend that someone go to a tantric to cure a disease. There is no, I used to not believe them 100%. Now I don't believe them 95%. Because I've seen too much weird stuff, and I think it's important, if we're really being scientific, it's important to consider other hypotheses. It's very hard to find these people. The problem is it's very easy to find people who will take your money and claim that they can do it. That's very easy. And that's why when we sort of think about this lecture and what's the point of the lecture, forget about all this stuff, right? That's not the emphasis that I want to place for y'all. The emphasis is on the first part, the first hour and a half of the lecture. The emphasis is on enough, not today. The internal struggle. That I feel pretty good about, even though it's weird, and I can't scientifically defend it. Because I just don't think science can study that yet. Doesn't mean it's not true. Right? So there's a big difference between what is true. So if you look at human history is the story of science is literally humans discovering things before we knew them to be true. The discovery happens first. Right? This is something that a lot of people forget about science. A scientific experiment starts with a hypothesis. You can't do science without an answer at the beginning. Right? So it's observation, hypothesis, experiment, data collection, conclusion. So all of the greatest discoveries in science were not science when we discovered them. Science is the process of verifying what's true, not discovering what's true. So this is where, like, I think the main takeaways, and now we'll get to Q&A. Main takeaways for y'all is, like, if you're struggling in your life, you should work at the level of karma, absolutely. But don't forget the level of Shakti. Because oftentimes working at the level of karma is insufficient. And I see this all the time with a lot of the people that really struggle in our community, like these incels, black pillars, people who've lost hope, people who are trying really hard, people who are working really hard. And it's so hard to explain to them what they're doing wrong. And who knows? I mean, it could not be wrong, right? Maybe it's all just craziness on my part. We have to consider that. So this is not this. I don't share this with you as like, oh, like this is the truth. This is a principle that I found to be very, very helpful for my own life and incredibly helpful for people who understand and take advantage of it. So this is not a conclusion that I'm giving y'all. This is the hypothesis. I'm offering you a hypothesis for you to develop an experiment and test, and y'all report back whether this is true or not. Right? Because I could be delusional. Okay. Let's get to questions. Here's the Slido link. Thank you, Crow. And by the way, thank you all very much for chatting quite a bit today. Like, I mean, I don't usually read too much of the chat when I'm lecturing. I read more on the memberships lectures. But today especially, it was very helpful because this was really hard it was really hard for me to gauge how much sense I was making. And so it was incredibly helpful to kind of see where y'all were. And as with most of the membership stuff, so one thing just while we're populating questions and y'all are voting. So I saw that some people really got what I was saying today and some people didn't. That's okay. So part of the challenge, part of what we're doing here is that generally speaking, we're going for the lowest common denominator when we make our general content on the internet. Right? We're assuming that everyone is starting from zero. But that precludes the discussion of things like this. There's no way you can explain this from zero. Or maybe you can. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we could stick this and anyone who could watch it could understand what I'm saying. Now, the challenge is if you're someone who doesn't get what we talked about today, that's okay too. What I'd strongly encourage is revisit this. Meditate for 6 months. Use some of the other stuff that we've talked about. Do Anahat Chakra meditations. Go and understand self-esteem. Go put your life together some. And revisit this. Just because you don't understand it now does not mean you're stupid, does not mean you're less than, does not mean you're inferior. That is your karma. You have entered here today, and maybe this lecture is part of your driving force that will put you on the path. Don't let your ego get in the way. So go and practice and then revisit. Okay? And also remember, if y'all don't understand, this is not a defect, and also bluntly, in you necessarily, right? It could be a defect in me, where I don't understand this stuff 100%. So maybe the biggest reason that this is hard to understand is because you have someone with 50% knowledge who's trying to teach, which in and of itself is, generally speaking, a terrible idea. So don't blame yourself. Okay. Top comment is, thank you, Dr. K. You are welcome. That's why we do this, right? And I was like, I know we're kind of coming close to the end of the year, and I felt like I want to give you all something a little bit different. Isn't accumulation of too much Shakti dangerous and will attract asuras? 100%. 100%. Okay, now we go weird. Y'all ready for the weirdness? We haven't even started weird, okay? This is weird stuff part 1. If you guys want to get into Asuric forces. Okay. So let's start with this. What is an Asura? So Asuras are, I don't know what else to call them. I would call them evil psychic beings. Okay? They're kind of like, so in Buddhism, there's this idea that between the material plane and hell, there's something called the realm of hungry ghosts, which is where you have these like psychic creatures that are just hungry all the time. And no matter how much they get their desires satisfied, they're always wanting more. So Gabor Mate has a book called, I think, The Realm of Hungry Ghosts, where he talks about struggles with addiction. And his like analogy is that, you know, addiction is like this hungry ghost, where no matter how much you feed it, it never gets satisfied. So Asuras are like these beings that are from non-material planes. And for a long time, I used to think it was like pure BS until I had a couple of, I read some research, had a couple of experiences, then a couple of other things clicked for me. One thing that clicked for me is, like we said earlier, science is not about the discovery of truth. It is about the verification of truth, which a lot of people don't realize. Similarly, I know it's kind of weird, but we operate with like neuroscience. We assume that thoughts are not real, but the foundations of our neuroscience involve subjective thoughts, right? So it's a kind of weird how like we do this weird thing in neuroscience where we say thoughts aren't real, but our modern understanding of neuroscience, how do we know that the amygdala is where we feel fear? Because of the subjective experience of it. Do animals think? We don't know. Do humans think? Yes. How do we know that humans think? Because they say so. Because they have the subjective experience of it and they can communicate it. But we have no evidence of thought. So this is where there's like realms of existence that are not material. Generally speaking, we have no instrumentation, we have no telescope for that, which is why we assume that they don't exist, except we have all these human observations of subjective experience. Okay, so then we get to one weird thing, which is like DMT. So now that we're giving human beings certain kinds of psychedelic compounds, they are having a consistent form of experience of contact with otherworldly beings. Now, there's absolutely the possibility that these otherworldly beings are not real, they're just figments of our imagination. But thoughts are figments of our imagination too. They too are not real. And what is the impact of thoughts on the world, on your life? Immense. So non-real things can have a huge impact. Even though they're not real. Thoughts aren't real. So I would say that an asura is as real as a thought, and you can say therefore it is not real because it is imagination. Fair enough. I think they're more real than that, but anyway. So that's what an asura is. So on these other dimensions, the non-material dimensions, there are these organisms called asuras. And the basic problem with asuras is that they can affect the material plane, but they can't accumulate Shakti in the same way. So oftentimes what they will do, if you start to accumulate Shakti, I know this is insane. I know this is nuts, okay? You all ask, that's why I'm answering. As you accumulate Shakti, asuras will latch onto you. So when you do certain kinds of tantric practice, they will send you all kinds of problems. So people asked, there was a question earlier, should you meditate when you're sick? That depends on why you're meditating. If you're doing tantric practice, absolutely. The sickness is a malefic force trying to deviate you from your practice. That's what the meditative tradition says. Up to you to decide what's true and what's not true. And you know how I said it's bizarre the number of people that have offered me 7 figures of money for doing basically nothing? I know this is insane, okay? So this is my religious or spiritual beliefs. This is not truth. Please let go of truth. Truth ended a while ago. This is Dr. K's delusion. But if you really ask me what's going on, I think as I've accumulated Shakti, asuras start swirling around. And asuras will also... See, anytime you see someone who seems to fall into... I don't know how to say this, so I'm going to try. If you pay attention and your awareness is subtle enough, like I think there's a lot of asuric forces that are quite visible once you know what to look for. So what you're usually looking for is unbelievable shortcuts to success. Usually is an immense suffering on the part of the person who achieves the success. That's the most common. I don't know this, but what I've been able to deduce so far, my hypothesis, is that when you have immense worldly power and the person is suffering, they made an asuric trade. They gave into an asuric force and they got something. It's like making a deal with the devil, right? And by the way, these are like not concepts that are just alone in Hinduism and Buddhism. Literally, we have this phrase in English, making a deal with the devil. And Christ was in the desert and he got tempted by the devil. So I think we have these human experiences that are across cultures. And it's not even that hard. You can look, because a lot of these people will be famous. Or infamous. And I shouldn't say, so I think this is where things get, I want y'all to understand that this is on a layer that does not contradict biology. So I think if you take these people and you assess them, you will find a history of trauma. You will find a history of personality disorder. You will find parents with personality disorder. All of these things can be sufficiently explained with psychology, psychiatry, RNG, whatever. Nothing is lacking. But this is a different dimension. And so as this is important to understand, why am I even saying this? Because this is probably the thing that will destroy my credibility the most. So why even speak? I speak because today, arguably, I gave you a slight crack in the door to accumulate your own Shakti. And so irrespective of what happens to my reputation, there's one other thing I have to give you, which is a warning. Which is that if you engage in Shakti, be careful. Be very careful. All kinds of things will pull you away. All kinds of things will attack you. All kinds of things will try to tempt you. And if you reject them, they will not be happy. And they will start to attack. And when they attack, this is why you have to double down on your practice. As long as you stay true to your practice, they will not be able to hurt you. But they will tempt you in other ways, right? It's not just tempting with positives. It can be tempting with negatives too, right? They'll try to bully you. They'll try to incite fear and all this kind of stuff. All of it will happen. Stay true to your practice, right? So, I mean, so much of what I've accomplished in this world is like through the grace of some power that is greater than me. And that's kind of the way to sort of like, that's the way that I survive, and who knows how long I'll survive. But anyway, it's just, I didn't do anything to deserve this, and I'm going to put forth 100% effort and keep going because that's what my lot is in life, right? So actions, not outcomes. So all this stuff kind of tracks back to this. So the TLDR is stick with it. So a tantric will tell you that you can accumulate Shakti for a material gain. I just don't say, I'm the one who says don't do that. So this is what I want y'all to understand. So prarabdha means the storehouse of your karma that manifests in this life. So you have all this past karma, which is like 1,000 bank transactions that are sitting in some ledger somewhere. And then some portion of that debt you're going to cash in or pay off in this life. That's prarabdha. So prarabdha is the storehouse, the section of the storehouse of karma that we're dealing with in this life. Now you can accumulate Shakti and alter this life, but then you're expending that Shakti. Right? So if I accumulate 100 units of Shakti, I can transfer that into a positive karma. And you gain, let's say, like 10% of what you cash in. So there's a pretty big translation, like cost of exchange. So if you want to spend, if you want to accumulate 100 Shakti bucks and cash them in for 10 karma bucks, you can do that. That's fine. I don't recommend it. Because I think if you want to make karmic bucks, earn in karmic bucks, right? So if you want a positive karmic life, take positive karmic actions. Right? So it's like, if I want to earn in Japanese yen, I should earn in Japanese yen. And then there's a 90% trade-off when I go to the dollar, then I should earn in dollars if I want dollars. I should earn in yen if I want yen. Now, what about all these people who are black pillars and things like that? Because aren't they doing karmically the right thing? So this is where, I don't know, this is where I kind of breaks down. And that doesn't break it down for me. I mean, I know what it is. I just don't know why. It's kind of weird, but it's sort of like if you accumulate a lot of Shakti, like some of it like overflows. And then all of your karma gets enhanced. I know it's weird. That's the best that I can explain it. So what's happening, so what y'all need to do is Shakti is almost like a buff for your karmas. It's like percentage buffs. I don't know. Or it's something like with karma, that's not the right analogy. So I would say a better analogy is if you think about plumbing in a house, the majority of effort is putting in the plumbing. But you can put in all the plumbing that you want, but if you never turn on the tap, you will never get any water. So what you need is a lot of effort putting in plumbing, and then some people don't turn on the tap. And then they looked at their house and they're like, I've spent 100 hours putting in this plumbing and I have no water. So I would say people who put in a lot of effort, they're missing just one thing, which is turning on the tap. That's what I would say is the Shakti accumulation. That's a better analogy. So something about when I work with these people, when they start the path of Shakti accumulation, all of their efforts seem to like accumulate yields now. They're manifesting. There's some benefit to all their actions. Yeah, so the pipes are the karma and the Shakti is the water. It's the energy. It's what flows through. Okay? Okay, when I close my eyes to meditate, I soon see annoying kaleidoscope tunnel spirals. Why does this tunnel keep appearing? And how can I stop it distracting my meditation? Okay, so I'd say go through it. It's not, you're missing the point. It's like, hey, I'm sitting in this movie theater and this fucking movie is playing all the time. And how do I mean, I guess you could, like, I'm not saying you have to go into it. Right? So you don't have to. So if you're doing a meditation, then just redirect your attention. It's no different from any other meditation with any other problem. So I'm meditating and a cat keeps on crawling over me. What do I do? I'm meditating and I keep on having intrusive thoughts of, I don't know, penises. What do I do? And like, so sure. So you could say, just return your attention to the thing. That's the practice of dharana. But I would say that, you know, if you're seeing things in your Chidakash, I would concentrate on those things. Concentration on the Chidakash is a very good meditation practice. So if you have kaleidoscopic images that seem very, very prevalent and stuff, that's also Anahat Chakra kind of stuff. So what I would say is that have a detached gaze from the kaleidoscope. So just let it flow and look at it and play around with it some. And if you play around with it some, you may find that it actually goes away on its own, which is fine. So you can watch them if you want to. You can let them go if you want to. You can observe them. You can also see if they form a pattern. Yeah. Chidakash is the screen of the mind. So when I close my eyes, I see something. You see blackness with colors. That is the Chidakash. Okay, we'll do one more question. Okay, what's the next step after consistently feeling heat up the Kundalini spine during exhales? Better yet, any recommendations of solid yogic texts that lay out Prana Shakti practices? Okay. So there isn't like a practice. So if y'all have reached that point, that's first of all very, very good. That means your internal awareness is ready for the next step. The question is, what the next step is depends on what your chakra is. So, yeah. And so when I'm working with people who are able to do that, usually the other things that they experience when they meditate, or something about their temperament, something about their personality, or something about their goals, will let me guide them in a different practice. But I don't know if this kind of makes sense. It's kind of like, okay, so now that I do stretching, how do I play the sport? Well, you stretch whether you play basketball or baseball or swimming or whatever, right? You always stretch. But then you ask, how do I play the sport? Well, that depends on what the sport is. Right? So that depends. Like, do you learn how to dribble next? Do you learn how to breathe next? Do you learn backstroke next? Like, that depends. And this is where we get to the second part of the question, which is a good one, which is what are the texts? So it's not that you should do something, it's that you should follow what happens internally. What feels next to do? So for example, like if you're doing Om chanting, I would say a next preparatory practice that's really good is perfecting Om chanting. Now, what does that mean, perfecting Om chanting? Perfecting Om chanting means chant Om, but do so with even levels of ah, oo, and silence, perfectly even. No hitches between ah and oo and So if you listen to people who do Om chanting, they'll go ah, So there's like a hitch. Instead, so no hitches. So there are more subtleties to practice that become really, really important. Right? So like those are the kinds of things, though, that you don't need like y'all are missing the point, kind of. You need some amount of basic training, but then you're beyond a text. Right? Text is for like science in the material world. So you can learn from texts, but even today with this lecture, it's not like how do you accumulate Shakti? What are we talking about? Internal experience. Y'all need to decalibrate from this emphasis on texts. There are texts that you can look at, and I've given you some, but it's kind of like, that's not, yeah. So by all means, like do proper, so I'd say kind of the next thing, and then if you don't know the answer there, here's the why I'm telling y'all Hatha Yoga. Because for the next thing, if you've achieved that, now what you need to do, so you have a certain capability. Now what you need to do is, how can I say this? So it's like, okay, Dr. K, I'm pretty good at, okay, so Dr. K, I learned how to make a basic beat, right? And now you're like, now what's next? Well, now I'd say get a set of drums. Now get bongos, whatever, right? So like, this is why, like, when we're teaching meditation at the beginning, it's more about the technique. So the first stage of meditation is about the technique. The second stage of meditation isn't about the technique, it's about the instrument. So as you purify yourself, get rid of caffeine, get rid of drugs, maybe even consider vegetarianism, sattvic diet, regular yoga, that will enhance the quality of your practice. Now you know the basics. We think about advancement as if it's only technique. But it's kind of like, if you want to, what's the difference between someone who swims and an Olympic swimmer? It's not that the Olympic swimmer has some secret technique. We teach the same fucking technique to everybody. What's the difference? The difference is the instrument, the refinement of the technique. And so if you have that internal level of awareness, go learn any general meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, and refine your instrument. Then you'll be ready for more. So any kind of Hatha Yoga will do. Tai Chi is going to be great. You can do pranayama and all. Just go and learn random shit. It'll be enough. And then a teacher will emerge when you're ready. Qigong is great too. You can do that. How did you know whether applying to medical school over and over was Shakti or chasing a desire? How do we discern it if it's Shakti or giving into greater desires? How do we know if we're secretly giving things up for greater desires? Great question. I saw this one multiple times in chat. So I'll do this one last. So the way you know depends on the subtlety of your awareness. So do you know where your desires come from? Do you know whether you're doing something based on ego? So that's where the practice matters, right? So when I was applying to med school for the third time, I had been meditating seriously for 7 years. And I had struggled with those things. I had struggled with them immensely over years. I started my struggles at the age of 21, and they lasted me until 28. They're even ongoing now. And how do I know it wasn't desire? Because I had let that go. I'd let it go. If it was desire, I would have given up, or I would have gone to the Caribbean or something like that, right? If I desired to be a doctor, I would have found a way to do it. And so as your subtle awareness increases, you will be able to detect whether things are greater desires or hiding. And that's why we give you guys these kinds of tips, right? That's why we teach you about ahamkar. We teach you about self-esteem. We teach you about desire. So as you gain fluency in these concepts, you will be able to tell the difference. And the short answer, that's the long answer. The short answer is just what is in your heart and what is in your mind when you're acting. The biggest problem that we have is that we do most things blind internally. Right? We don't know what we're feeling or acting or why we're doing things. Or we're conflicted, and we don't resolve those conflicts before we act. So the way that you know is that you spend the time resolving those conflicts. And bluntly, the reason that I didn't get in years 1 or 2 is because I was doing it for the wrong reasons. The Shakti was insufficient. I wasn't accumulating it. And my ego had to be stripped away. I had to really let go of my desires. Then I remember I went to I had a conversation with a Swami. And the Swami was like teaching me some stuff about meditation. It was at this place called the Ramakrishna Vedanta Society in Boston. Swami Tyagananda. Nice guy. He's also the chaplain at the Hindu chaplain at Harvard. So I went to Swami Tyagananda one day and I said, Swami Tyagananda, I don't know what to do. And I said, I've applied to medical school 2 years in a row. I've gotten 1 interview each year. So I got 1 interview in year 1, 1 interview in year 2. And so those seem to be kind of like stretches anyway. It's like most people didn't want to interview me. And so I said, I don't know if I should quit or give up or what. My uncle is telling me I should get a PhD. Like, I don't know what to do. And he was basically like, well, 2 years is not a long time. Right? Crazy thing to say to a 27-year-old, 26-year-old. He's like, you can give it another year. And I was like, okay. And that was the end of it. It was kind of like, just go for it one more time. Why not? There was very little passion or vigor or whatever. It was just very, very, very simple. And the more simple your drive is, the closer it is to Shakti. Because once we get ego and desires and all this stuff, once all the stuff gets in the way, then it gets polluted. But simplicity. That's the essence of Shakti. And what are we trying to do in meditation? We're trying to go back to the simplest simplicity. So if you look at the Hindu tradition is flowery. All these yagnas and rituals and gods and colors and objects. They're holding objects in the hands and all these yantras and mantras and all this kind of like complicated stuff. And then you have Zen Buddhism, which is like you don't need any of that stuff. Just simplicity. You have the Buddha who went through all that complicated stuff and sat down under a tree and he's like, none of this works. I'm done. Enough. Enough is enough. Finished. I let it all go, all of it, all of it. All of my desires for enlightenment, all of my desires for growth, all of my desires for everything else, I let it go. Done. What are you doing next? Nothing. There is no concept of next. He truly let everything go. Everything. And he sat, and it was done. So you can assume that it will be a deeper desire until you're sure it's not. Until you stop thinking about desire. And it's weird, right? So like some of that stuff is like not, and I mean, it's embarrassing. That's the attitude that I carried with me through med school. Which is why like I didn't go to the award ceremony because I never looked at my grades, which is kind of dumb. It's like my mentor was like, hey, where are you? I was going to present you with an award. I was like, I didn't know, my bad. Right? So like it's hard to describe, but you'll know when you know. And if you have desires right now, it's okay to have desires. Right? So it's okay to have desires. You don't need to be perfect right now. Why are you desiring to be desireless to begin with? Oh my God, there's a subtler, greater desire that I can't have. Oh no. Subtler, greater desire. And that in and of itself, your desire to get out of the subtler, greater desire is a desire. No escaping it. Right? And so this is the beauty. When you're like, F it. There's no way to get around it. I'm done. Finished. GG. I will always have desires. I'm fucked. And then you sit down under a tree, you have a sip of water, and you're like, okay. And that's how you let it go. There's no letting it go without letting it go. It's just more grasping. All right, so that's also one of the reasons I didn't become a monk. So I didn't become a monk because I realized one day that becoming a monk was chasing after a very big desire. And oh boy, was I going to trick the hell out of myself. Even letting it go can be the strongest of graspings. So this is when, you see, a lot of people misunderstand Buddha. Arrogant for me to say so, but I think I'm right. You guys tell me. Right, so I don't know if you guys tell, but I watch my ego. I watch what comes out of my mouth. I watch. Even I'm claiming it. So I'm constantly paying attention. What could be ego? What could be ego? What could be ego? And then I don't say it's not ego, because it could be ego. But it's like you have to watch constantly, constantly, constantly. You'll see that, how I make all these self-referential statements? That's the training. Could be ego, so be it. The moment that you stop watching is the moment it becomes ego. Okay? So, last question. Who are we to understand the Buddha? We are the Buddha. That's who we are to understand the Buddha. The elevation of the Buddha and the denigration of ourselves is a mistake that the Buddha would never make. That's his point. See, the Buddha grew up in a society that had a caste system, and there were the Brahmins at the top, who had become spiritually bankrupt and materially wealthy. A story as old as time. As long as you've had religion and spirituality, you've had some good religion and spirituality, then you've had some people who pretend to be religious and spiritual and scam everyone out of their money. So he rebelled against that. And he went to learn. And a big thing that people say, so we're saying, okay, how do I know if this is greater desire masquerading as a desire for Shakti? So even if you desire being desireless, that's a desire. So when Buddha said, this is what a lot of people don't understand, when he said life is suffering, this is what he was talking about. He's not saying that life is terrible. See, if you're a nihilist, you will look at that and you will say, oh, see, even the Buddha said that it's hopeless. He's not saying it's hopeless. He's saying that the default state is ignorance. And there's no escaping this trap if you step into the trap. That's all he's saying. If you play the game of desire, there's no way you can win. If you choose a life of suffering, all of life is suffering. There's a way to transcend that. That's his whole point. It's not one of hopelessness. It's like one of problem solving. Right? Okay. The weird stuff, part 1, thus endeth.